Hey everyone, how's it going? In this video, I have an insane tale from Beaumont, Texas, from Arizona, and California. So you're definitely going to want to pull up a stump for this video and make sure you're following the 3 H's of the channel. Thank you for watching. So I live out in LA, and as you can imagine, with living somewhere as densely populated as that, sometimes you just have to get away. So the day comes and I decide to take a day off work and go with my girlfriend to a national park. It's Joshua Tree National Park, if you're curious. It was even hotter than the forecast had said it was going to be. During the daytime, we see cars on the road now and again, but not quite as many as you'd figure. We eventually find our camping site, and we ended up getting all the way there, realizing that we had forgot the tent, and decided, well, we're not going back now. We'll just sleep in the car. So if you can picture it, it's 104 Fahrenheit outside the car. It's even hotter inside. I roll the windows down part way. As the sun goes down, the temperature stays the same. I can't see a foot outside the window, but I can, however, see a lot of really pretty stars. So I just stare at those for a while. So I'm laying there, the darkness and the heat keep pressing in. I have this terrible feeling all of a sudden. I felt some kind of shift in the air. I can't explain it any other way, but I had this awful feeling that I really should not leave the windows down as far down as they are. It's that feeling you get when somebody enters a room, but you have your back to the door, but you know, beyond your shadow of a doubt, that there's somebody in there. I figured to calm myself down, I'll put my shoes and shirt back on, and I'll go up to the front seat, roll up the windows, start the car, and just let the AC run for a few minutes. And then, just as I do this, I hear a crash near the dumpster for the camping area, and I thought, if we leave, we have to pass by that dumpster to get back on the road. My girlfriend is still asleep at this point, but as I shine the headlights, I notice that there's a huge, massive shadowy figure standing on top of the dumpster. And just as my headlights are about to hit it, it throws something at my windshield. It took me just a few seconds to realize, but whatever this is, threw a bat at my windshield. It made me jump, made me really on edge, as if I wasn't there already. My girlfriend woke up and said she saw something on top of the dumpster. I told her to go back to sleep and I'll drive us home. I don't plan on going back there anytime soon. This is a story that was told to me by some people that work in the Arizona state government. I would assume that they would have nothing to gain from making up a story like this, and instead, it would make them have a lot to lose really, because of people ridiculing them if the story was fake and it got out that it was them who made it up. But it goes as follows. So about 10 years ago, this person and his wife were in the backwoods area in a very isolated region, not that far from Sedona. They were planning on camping in the area, and they were looking for a nice place to set up their camp. They hiked about 3 to 4 miles into the backcountry and were on government lands that belonged to either the Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service. Anyway, they find a very scenic spot as they reach a clearing, and they stop there to start to make their camp. As they did, both of them began to feel very uneasy, as if they were being watched from some unknown direction. The feeling began to get so intense that they both decided to pack up and hike a little further to somewhere else. As they did, they came to an area where they heard lots of people talking, but there was no one around. While they were walking, seemingly out of nowhere, a large tank is sitting right in front of them with about 20 military personnel running around in a frenzy. Curiously, they approached the soldiers and asked them what was going on and if this was some kind of exercise. Immediately, they both had automatic rifles shoved into their faces, and a barrage of questions came from an angry man in a uniform. He very aggressively asked, "How the hell did you two get up here, and what the hell are you doing here?" The man threatened them with arrest, and they both explained that they were simply hiking, and they happened to come across this scene. The man then explained that he was a state official and well known, and demanded to know what was happening. The military man, still with the rifle pointed at them, said, "This is none of your damn business, and if you want to go back to your lives, you'd better get the F out of here right now." They agreed, and both quickly packed up as quick as they could and left there. Now, here is something that is strange. The man told me that on the military guy's shoulder was a symbol of an upside-down triangle with a snake in it. On the outside of the triangle was the earth. The patch said Special Forces, and also had some kind of very strange writing. He described it as being like hieroglyphics. He later told me that it reminded him of the symbols that they supposedly found at Roswell by the witnesses there. Later on, he asked somebody in the National Guard, and he was told by that person that it was classified information, and there's not really a whole lot they could do, and they didn't know much about it. But it had to be some kind of underground base and testing in the area. Once again, this is only from what I was told. I did not witness this myself, but when I was told the story, it resonated as true to me, since the person telling me really had nothing to gain from it, and I don't think they'd want to make that up, especially such a story like that, to bring unwanted attention on themselves. All of this happened to me when I was 13 years old. I was visiting my uncle in a town called Beaumont in Texas. It's right next to the Gulf and the border of Louisiana. My uncle owns a large property on the outskirts of town. It's very marshy and isolated. A solid 80% of the property is dense woods and just swamp. I've lived in Houston, and I would visit during the summer, usually for 2 to 4 weeks. We would hunt ducks and fish in the pond behind his house. I absolutely loved it there, but I never ventured too far into the woods. A trail ran through it for my uncle's four-wheeler, but he didn't even hunt there. For that, we went to his buddy's property, about 5 miles down an old service road that he lived off of. When I was around 11, I started to ask about the woods that were beyond his pond. I ended up asking my aunt why they even owned the land if they weren't going to use it, because about half of the woods were contained in a plot of land that my uncle bought in 2004 or something. She said that an older man used to live out there in an old trailer. When he died, my uncle bought the land, and there was something about protecting the scenery or something like that my uncle gave as a reason. My uncle, however, was very evasive of the topic and didn't like to talk about it. But he knew me well, so instead of saying not to go there, he would mention stories of huge gators and snakes that would eat full-grown bucks. He called it the Blackwater because the canopy from cypress trees were so thick, no light reached the swamp water. When I visited my uncle during one of those summers, I was especially curious about the Blackwater. I had gotten into the show Supernatural around that time, and it made me very curious about all things of that nature. I kept telling him that there could be some cryptids, like a Wendigo or something, hiding back in there. He said, "You won't find a Wendigo down here, son, but you better watch out for them at your Nana's house. She's retired and lives in Syracuse." I said, "Then what do we find down here?" My uncle paused. He said, "Gators," and then changed the topic. I was going to be there for 3 weeks, so I decided to do a mock-up cryptid investigation of my own. Basically, it was just me sitting on a porch with a pen and paper during the day and taking notes on what I saw and heard. Typical weird 13-year-old stuff. I spent about a week just helping out my uncle with chores on his property, weeding out a pesky water moccasin from the pond, cleaning up branches after a storm, etc. One day, my uncle asks me if I want to help him set up some crawdad traps out in the bayou that starts towards the eastern edge of his property. He says that we can take the four-wheeler out there. I thought this was going to be great. It's exactly what I wanted. So we load up the traps, and we head out at about 4 a.m. so we can have some by the time dinner comes. It's still dark out, and the bayou is maybe a 3-4 minute wheeler ride from his house. He brings his dog Drew with us. He is a huge Saints fan, by the way. So We begin to set up the traps when Drew starts barking fiercely at something in the woods. It's in the direction of the Blackwater. My uncle tells Drew to calm down and tells me that it's a nutria rat or something. He can tell that I'm nervous though. Those damn supernatural episodes that I've been watching have me basically paranoid. The dog was barking into the deep scary woods. I know how stereotypical it sounds. And then we heard footsteps and branches breaking, that kind of thing. But nothing actually happened besides Drew barking. We set up our final traps and we head back home. Later in the day, when we go back to pick up the traps, Drew suddenly doesn't want to come. He won't leave the porch. Usually, he hops right into the back of the four-wheeler and loves the ride. But this time, he completely ignores my uncle. We brush it off. We pick up the traps, and nothing weird happens. We do, however, get an absolute shitload of crawdads, though. A few of my older cousins who live in Shreveport come down for food. It's a good old family bash. Everyone gets drunk, and we listen to the Astros game while sitting on the porch. At this point, it's probably about 10 p.m., and my uncle and the female cousins have gone inside. It's just me and the drunk guys outside. This is when things get weird. So I had 3 cousins there that night, aged 18, 20, and 23. They are my uncle's kids. All of them work-ish in construction in Shreveport. They know me pretty well and love to joke around with me, telling me outrageous stories that I believed is true. They told me about a creature that roams the swamp and will eat kids who don't behave. I was a bit old for those kind of stories, and I knew that it was just some old Cajun legend. They said that one lived in the Blackwater, and it ate the old man that lived there. I shrug it off and laugh. I thought that it was just one of their stories. I keep telling them that I know it's not real. They're all very intoxicated, and they tell me to go look for myself. It's very dark, and I wasn't a fan of going into the Blackwater, especially after what happened with Drew. But my cousins, however, called me a pussy, so I knew I had to do it. My oldest cousin, Eric, said that he was going to take me out there. He staggers inside and comes back with 2 flashlights, a handgun, and 2 Coors Lights. The other guys get uncomfortable and ask Eric, "Are you really taking him?" They're not nearly as drunk as him. Eric gets angry and not so audibly whisper says, "Don't tell me you pussies actually believe those stories." He kind of stumbles toward me and starts to head out to the tree line, beckoning me to come. I follow. I figured going in with an adult with a handgun was probably my safest bet possible. My other cousins jokingly say, "Don't die." But something is off about the way they say it. They seem nervous. Part of them thinks it's the alcohol. The other part thinks that they're just paranoid. So they don't exactly do anything to stop us from going. So my cousin takes the lead, and we start down the four-wheeler path into the Blackwater. Somehow, it's even darker under the canopy. There's no stars, no moonlight. Soon, the hum of all the bullfrogs fades away. The lights from my uncle's house disappear. It's very quiet out here. Anyone who lives near a swamp knows that the symphony of nocturnal animals doesn't stop for much. Alcohol hadn't impaired my cousin enough for him to not notice this. He stands still and pans his flashlight off into the cypress grove that surrounds us. He says, "Wait here, I'll be right back." He heads off, and I wait on the trail. Now, I'm starting to get scared, and soon, I can't see his flashlight anymore. Soon after this, I begin to hear footsteps. I call out for Eric. There's no reply. I turn off my light, thinking that he's trying to play a drunk trick on me, and it's not going to work, so I turn my light off so he can't see me. But the footsteps get closer regardless. When they seem to be right behind me, I turn on my flashlight and whip around. This was a big mistake. I illuminate something, a beast, probably 7 feet tall. It looked like a werewolf that's been decomposing in a bayou for a few days. I don't know if it was the flashlight or not, but I swear that it had red eyes, and it smelled rancid. Its body was skinny and covered in blotchy fur. There were tribal-looking necklaces that hang around its neck. The head was of a large coyote, if I had to guess. I was distracted by the eyes. The arms hung down to its lower legs, and the fingers looked like claws. I had all the air sucked out of my lungs. I was in total shock. This thing stared at me and hung its jaw agape. It began to howl. It sounded like a wolf drowning. It was ugly and high-pitched, and it cut through the silence. I then gained enough sense to run. I screamed as I ran. I heard its footsteps behind me. It galloped into a dense patch of trees, but I could hear it still following me. It growled and made horrible noises. It became very clear that it could catch me anytime it wanted, and it was toying with me. I wanted to stop and just let it get me. I kept turning back to see those eyes. It would break branches and throw things onto the trail. I dropped my flashlight and just ran to where I thought the trail was. Soon, I was running through swampy water. I heard it splashing near me. It felt like hours that I was out there. I saw the moonlight through the trees, and I knew that I was almost there. The creature would also go silent, seemingly at will. It would disappear and then pop out next to me a few moments later. I hated that it was toying with me. It let out another one of those howls. I covered my ears, it was so loud. And then I saw the lights from my uncle's house. I broke through the tree line and fell down about 100 feet from the house. Behind me, the creature stopped where the trees ended. It panted lightly and stared at me with those same red eyes. It slipped back into the black water. I heard another howl a minute later. The guys were still on the porch, tried to calm me down. I told them that I saw something. They didn't argue. 10 minutes later, Eric comes sprinting toward the house without his flashlight or his gun. He falls down and promptly throws up several times. I was in shock and actually passed out around this time. When I woke up, I was on my way to the hospital. They said my cousin and I got separated. They said that it was just a large coyote. That was it. They told me anything else I saw was an illusion. I saw a therapist for a while because the creature would show up in my dreams. My uncle, though, believed me, and he said not to tell anyone because he didn't want people to go out there to investigate. He said the woods seemed to keep that thing in there, and he owns all of the Blackwater area to keep it in there as well. He leaves a deer in there and such. It's the only reason why the four-wheeler track is even there. My uncle called the beast a rougarou, an old Cajun legend. My cousin really should have gotten therapy as well. Seeing that did something to him. He was never the same after that night. He quit his job about a week later. He randomly went off-grid and never contacted the family again. We find out 2 years later he died of a fentanyl overdose. He was living in a dope house about an hour south of Baton Rouge. I haven't gone down to see my uncle since 2015. I moved to Phoenix, and frankly, I don't care for the woods anymore. I still see those eyes sometimes. I can only say one thing for sure, though. I'm never going back to Beaumont ever again. So what did you think of those encounters? What happened at the campsite? What exactly did they see? Not only that, what happened in Arizona? What exactly did they come across? And was that indeed a rougarou in Beaumont, Texas? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have a story of your own, you can send them to the email in the description below. And if you would like to support the channel, there's links down in the description, plus a new hype feature on YouTube that seems to help the channel get recommended to new viewers more often. If you were to use one of your hype things, majig, on one of my videos, I would be very grateful. So, with that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for pulling up a stump. I'll see you next week, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good weekend.